A very warm welcome to Only IS. I hope you all are doing well. और जो दो क्वेश्चंस आज ग्रुप में पोस्ट हुए थे, आई होप आपने वो दोनों लिख लिए होंगे. उन दोनों क्वेश्चंस में क्या अप्रोच देखनी थी, क्या अप्रोच के साथ उन दोनों क्वेश्चंस को डील करना था, दिस वी विल डिस्कस इन दिस वीडियो. सो टुडे वी हैव अराइव्ड एट डे 42 in our answer writing initiative. So those who are following us till now, it is really good and that you are writing the answers on a daily basis. Now the topic for the day is changing international political order. Now this is a segment of the syllabus of 2A, changing international political order, non-aligned movement, aims and achievements. So this is a very important segment of the syllabus. Let us begin. Let us see the first question that we have to handle today. Examine the extent to which the non-aligned movement was successful in challenging the contemporary world view of global order. How can the NAM reinvent itself in the current stage? So 15 mark question, two parts of the question. The second part is asking how the NAM can reinvent itself. It is about the reinvention of NAM. So it is hinting that in the present times, NAM has lost a bit of its relevance. How can we reinvent it again? Non-aligned movement. But the first part of the question is saying, examine the extent. You have to examine the extent to which non-aligned movement was successful. To what extent was it successful? Was it successful or was it not successful in challenging the contemporary world view of global order? तो यहाँ पर contemporary का क्या मतलब है? Contemporary means जिस टाइम नॉन अलाइंड मूवमेंट इंट्रोड्यूस किया गया था, उस टाइम जो वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर था, उस टाइम जिस तरीके से ग्लोबल ऑर्डर को देखा जाता था, क्या उसको चैलेंज करने में नैम सक्सेसफुल था, हुआ या नहीं हुआ? This we have to address. So this question is having two parts. We'll begin by addressing the first part पहले and then the second part. So here we have got the keyword which is non-aligned movement. The entire answer will revolve around NAM. Let us begin. Let's see इसके intro कैसे लिखे जा सकते थे. So since the answer is specifically dealing with NAM, so we have to introduce NAM in the intro itself. You have to tell what does, when was it, when did it came into force. NAM in the Cold War era, when we know that the world was divided into two poles. The entire world was divided into two poles, which in the language of political science was a situation that is called as bipolarity. So there was one pole which was US and the other pole was USSR, right? And in this context, in this Cold War era, NAM emerges. Now, what were the objectives of NAM? One, strategic autonomy. I hope you all know what basically was the idea behind establishing NAM. NAM was a grouping of, let's say, the newly independent countries. The countries which were earlier colonies, and when they became newly independent in that era, the Cold War times, they came together under the umbrella of NAM, non-aligned movement. So the objectives were, one, to ensure strategic autonomy. What do you understand by it? Strategic autonomy होता है कि जब कोई कंट्री अपने फॉरेन पॉलिसी के डिसीजंस ले रही है तो सोलली अपने नेशनल इंटरेस्ट को सामने रखकर, अपने नेशनल इंटरेस्ट को मद्देनजर रखकर कुछ फैसले ले रही है. उसके फैसलों पर किसी बाहरी देश का कोई प्रभाव नहीं है. That is known as strategic autonomy. Then the decision, independence in decision making, right? So these newly independent countries, so that they could take their decisions on their own and they should not be influenced by the countries that were colonizing them earlier. For this purpose, NAM was introduced. One, strategic autonomy. Two, collective position, so that all these newly independent countries, mostly they were referred to as the third world. The third world. These third world countries could represent themselves in a better way by collectively coming under one grouping and showing a collective solidarity, a collective position. These were the two ideas behind NAM, and NAM as an idea uh, within itself carried neutrality. Neutrality means, okay, we know this is Cold War era, the world is divided into two superpowers. Now understand what it means. Imagine living in a neighborhood where there are two big Superman people, men, and most of the neighbors around you are aligned either to this man or to this man, and then few of the neighbors decide that we will not align with either of them. Now this is a very strong statement to make. So NAM was this kind of a grouping. So it was ensuring neutrality, that whatever decisions we in newly independent countries will take, those will be based on our strategic autonomy, our national interest, and not from the lenses or the prism of US or USSR. So we will be maintaining neutrality. Whatever conflicts you both can engage in, whatever wars you both can engage in, but we will practice neutrality. So many people confuse NAM to non-isolation. It was not isolation. It didn't mean that these countries did not want to involve themselves in the issues of the world. They wanted to involve, but then while maintaining strategic autonomy. It was an unbiased, neutral position that these countries were taking. Okay, and it was non-commitment, which means we do not commit to any one of the blocks. We do not commit to the US bloc, we do not commit to the USSR bloc, but we will take our decisions on our merits, right? So this, the question was asking whether non-aligned movement at that time was able to was successful to change the worldview, the contemporary worldview, the contemporary world order. So the contemporary world order was that it was a Cold War era, two superpowers were there. Now, how was NAM successful or not? This we are going to write in the body, the main body of the answer. Till now in introduction, we have briefly mentioned, I have explained a lot, but you don't have to write all this. I explained so that you get a better idea कि नाम में क्या चीजें involved थी. तो आप introduction में simply you can write the objectives of NAM and tell the context, जिस context में NAM था, Cold War era का आप जिक्र कर सकते हैं. Now let us come to the main body of our answer. Okay, so now let us begin with the main body of this answer. The question was relating to the whether the non-aligned movement was successful or not in changing the world order of those times. So there are two schools of thoughts again here, and let us see what do they say. There is first school of thought which says that yes, NAM was successful because it presented a collective fight against colonialism. So whenever we are talking of NAM, we say that anti-colonial fight, the struggle against the struggle against colonialism was carried out by the NAM nations, NAM countries. Next is it stood against imperialism. It stood against racialism. अफ्रीका में, लेटिन अमेरिका में जो भी racialism था, NAM stood against it. NAM stood against the apartheid system. Right. Also, when this collective or grouping was formed, it ensured that US or USSR, which were the two major blocs, two major powers of Cold War era, they could not intervene in the internal affairs of these countries. Right. So these countries, the movement in itself, NAM was successful in ensuring that intervention does not take place. The intervention of these superpowers does not take place. उसके बाद disarmament. So NAM countries, the third world, has been a major force behind, let's say, calling nuclear weapons as a taboo. Thinking of nuclear weapons as a taboo. The Western world was possessing, most of the superpowers were possessing nuclear weapons. So this force of disarmament came from the third world. The third world countries were not having nuclear weapons, and they kind of created a moral pressure on the on these superpowers moral pressure on the superpowers to give up nuclear weapons, or let's say the disarmament movement. In 1970s, the 1970 was declared as a decade for disarmament by UN, and it was due to the efforts of the NAM. Due to the efforts of NAM. Okay, so when US or USSR, the two poles were not very happy with this movement. Of course, they were imagining these newly independent countries to align either with each of them, right? US wanted these countries to align with it, USSR wanted these countries to align with it, but when these countries decided strategic autonomy, non-intervention, based on the Banting principles. So this US called the NAM, non-aligned movement, as immoral and nonsense. While Stalin said that, Stalin was from USSR, he said that those who are not with us are obviously against us. जो हमारे साथ नहीं है इसका मतलब वो हमारे against है, हम तो यही presume करेंगे. तो both of them were trying to create pressure on NAM nations that to join their league. US was also creating pressure, USSR was also creating pressure. Stalin said that if you are not with us, we will assume that you are against us. We will assume you as an enemy. So this moral pressure was, not moral, this pressure was being created from both the blocks. Still, NAM remained intact, and that shows its success. Also, various political theorists are of the view that Third World during the Cold War, by the agency of NAM, acted as a cushion. और अगर थर्ड वर्ल्ड NAM नहीं बनाता, अगर NAM का आइडिया नहीं आता, तो the Cold War might have turned into a hot war. And this is a high probability. When so many countries will align against each other, there are high chances of a hot war, but only because these newly independent countries decided that they will not side with anyone. So the Cold War remained cold, right? Also, the arguments of disarmament were high because of NAM. So the Cold War remained cold, all thanks to NAM. This is what political theorists who favor NAM speak high of it. Secondly, we have another school which says that NAM was not much successful in shaping the global order at that time, in those times. Why do they say so? Because they say that with the emergence of NAM, okay, all these things were there: anti-colonialism, anti-imperialism waves, anti-racialism, all these things were there. But what about the significant economic development? The third world did not see any big economic development. Even today, the third world countries are suffering with poverty. The social development took a back seat. And these two things could have been assured if these newly independent countries would have aligned to US or USSR, which were economic mights. They might have helped these countries economically, militarily, and these countries could have developed at a much fast pace. So this is the argument by the school which says that NAM was not much successful in changing a global order. These countries suffered economic development. These countries suffered with social development. Also, NAM could not ensure the security of its nations. It could not reduce the superpower rivalry. Cold War did not end because of the efforts of NAM. Right. It ended when it had to end, when the two superpowers had exhausted themselves and USSR was disintegrated. So Cold War went through a normal process, the natural process that it had to go through. NAM had no role in reducing the rivalry, or let's say in bringing an end to the Cold War. So these are two schools of thought, opposite views. Both of these views have to be inculcated in our answer in one form or the other. Next, the second part of the question is asking us about the reinvention of NAM. So yes, NAM was relevant. See, you have made a third block, right? And this third block is relevant. It is neutral. You are saying it is neutral, it is unbiased block. But this is relevant only when there is first block and second block, right? But now the situation has changed. In the contemporary world order today, we have no one first bloc and second bloc. There is no bipolarity. USSR has disintegrated. There is no bipolarity. So what is the meaning of having a third bloc now? What is the meaning of having NAM now? Right, so these are the questions that have been raised, that what you created, the third block you created, that was relevant in a situation where two superpower blocks were there. Today the blocks have disintegrated, it's not there. So what is the relevance of NAM after Cold War? There is no relevance. One school of thought says this, the other school of thought says NAM has been biggest peace movement. It has ensured that Cold War remained cold. It has ensured that these newly independent countries do not entangle themselves in conflicts and wars, and they just focus on their own development. It has been the biggest peace movement. Also, the third world issues have not ended. The NAM was created not just because to avoid US and USSR adversary, but it was also created uh, as a collective strength of the third world countries. The third world countries wanted to focus on their own issues. NAM was also created for that purpose. Right. So this school says कि NAM की relevance बरकरार है, it will remain relevant, and we have entered a age of complex interdependence जहाँ पर जो सो कॉल्ड एनिमी कंट्रीज हैं वो भी एक दूसरे के साथ इंगेज कर रही हैं. चाइना इज इंगेजिंग विद यूएसए, चाइना इज engaging with India, Russia is engaging with USA. So in this era of complex interdependence, NAM remains relevant. Also, protectionism to fight these new rising issues which are affecting the third world, protectionism, anti-immigration, climate change, these are issues that remain relevant. Nuclear disarmament, these are issues that remain relevant for the third world countries, for the global south, for the underdeveloped countries, or for the developing countries that matter. These issues remain relevant. So till these issues will remain relevant, these are the issues of the countries who were part of NAM, who are part of NAM. So NAM will remain relevant, and now there is a need to reinvent NAM, to reform NAM, and to revitalize NAM. This is how you can conclude this essay, this answer, that now there is a need to reform NAM, we need to reinvent NAM, we need to revitalize it. Because, why? Because its relevance remains, and it is the voice of global South. Right. This is how this question was to be approached. We began with introducing NAM. We told what were the objectives of NAM. Then we looked at in the main body, we looked at two different point of views. जो ये बोलना चाह रहे थे कि NAM successful रहा या नहीं रहा. And then towards the end, towards the conclusion, we conclude that NAM remains relevant, and we need to reform it, we need to reinvent it, we need to revitalize it. And how will we reinvent it? By coming together, by holding regular meetings, and by by bringing on the table new ideas, by bringing on the table these new issues which remain relevant for the third world. Right. So NAM की relevance बरकरार रहेगी. This is how we conclude this answer. Now let us move towards our second question. The second question is, New Delhi neither advocates non-alignment. So New Delhi today is not advocating non-alignment, nor it displays anxiety about Russian disquiets over India-US strategic partnership and US concerns over persistent arms purchases by India from its emerging adversary. In this regard, highlight the relevance of non-alignment strategy for India in the contemporary world. So this is what the question wants us to answer. Right. So we can see that this question is talking of India's non-alignment policy. Now we need to understand here that this non-alignment policy is different from non-alignment movement. Non-alignment policy, which India has followed in its foreign policy for quite a long time. It is a tool in foreign policy, non-alignment. which means we will not align with any one country, we will not align with any one bloc or any one grouping. So this non-alignment policy. Now it is said, this is a statement, New Delhi neither advocates non-alignment. New Delhi currently does not advocate non-alignment. It has shifted to something that we call as strategic autonomy. Strategic autonomy. And India is openly engaging with USA as it has signed all the four fundamental agreements with USA: the Limoa, Comcasa, GSOMIA, and BECA. GSOMIA, BECA. India has signed all these four fundamental agreements with USA, and India is a strategic partner with USA. Similarly, with Russia, we are having most of our defense imports from Russia. In this crucial moment of Russia-Ukraine war, India did not join UN in resolutions against Russia. जब रशिया के अगेंस्ट रेजोल्यूशंस आए यूएन में तो इंडिया ने उन पर नहीं साइन किया, और हमारे इतने सारे डिफेंस इंपोर्ट्स भी रशिया से आ रहे हैं। तो इन चीजों को लेकर, जैसे S-400 को लेकर काफी यूएसए ने अपनी रिजर्वेशंस भी शो करी। यूएसए ने बोला कि हमें अच्छा नहीं लग रहा आप रशिया से ये सब ले रहे हो। रशिया को नहीं पसंद है कि इंडिया यूएसए के इतना क्लोज है कि चारों फंडामेंटल एग्रीमेंट साइन कर चुका है और एक स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप है, देन क्वाड में दोनों मेंबर्स हैं, राइट? बिकॉज बोथ ऑफ दीज कंट्रीज व्यू ईच अदर एज एडवर्सरीज, एक दूसरे को वो होस्टाइल नेशंस हैं, यूएस और रशिया। बट इंडिया यूएसए के साथ भी इंगेज कर रहा है, इंडिया रशिया के साथ भी इंगेज कर रहा है। तो और दोनों को इस चीज से दिक्कत है। रशिया को दिक्कत है कि इंडिया यूएसए से इतना क्लोज क्यों है, यूएसए को दिक्कत है कि इंडिया रशिया को अपोज क्यों नहीं कर रहा है, रशिया से क्यों डिफेंस इक्विपमेंट्स इतने खरीदता है। ये सब चीजें हैं। इसके बाद भी इंडिया इज कंटिन्यूइंग ऑन दिस पॉलिसी। तो द क्वेश्चन वांट्स टू आस्क कि इंडिया इज ओपनली इंगेजिंग विद ऑल दीज countries, तो इसमें आप what relevance does non-alignment strategy has for India in contemporary times? So this we have to deal with in this answer. Let's see हम इसके इंट्रो कैसे लिख सकते हैं। तो यहाँ पर जो आपके सामने कीवर्ड है that is non-alignment, right? The keyword in this question is non-alignment. Non-alignment. So you have to define it. It is not non-alignment movement जैसा पिछले क्वेश्चन में था. It is non-alignment as a policy, as a foreign policy tool. So we can define it, and then it is about India's contribution. Non-alignment is India's contribution to the theory of international politics. India began with this idea of non-alignment, that we will not align with any of the superpowers and we will take our decisions based on strategic autonomy, based on our national interests. Right? It was unbiased. It was unbiased of a foreign policy. तो जो कोल्ड वॉर टाइम में चॉपी वाटर्स थे, ऐसे बोलते हैं कि नॉन अलाइनमेंट हैज हेल्प्ड इंडिया to pass through the choppy waters of Cold War. That was a very difficult period because US wanted India to join its league, USSR wanted India to join its league, but India decided to join neither, right? So that was non-alignment helped India in those times, right? And it has served its purpose really well. Now in the body we can talk about the relevance of non-alignment as a foreign policy, right? So let's see, there is one school of thought which says कि हाँ foreign ये non-alignment जो है ये आज भी relevant है। क्यों relevant है आज भी? देखो conflicts हो रहे हैं। non-alignment का क्या मतलब है कि हम किसी एक की तरफ नहीं है, ठीक है? तो जब conflict होंगे कहीं पे भी और आप मान लो you are aligning with someone, or whenever that person will be involved in a conflict, then you will also be a part of that conflict. Always, it's like that. If India completely aligns with USA then wherever USA is involved in a conflict, India will have to side by USA, India will have to stand with USA, India will have to take dictates from USA. जैसा ये बोलेगा वैसा ही हमें करना होगा, हमारे सारे पॉलिसी डिसीजंस यही शेप करेगा, क्योंकि हम इसके कैंप में हैं, हमने इसके साथ अलाइन कर रखा है। तो अलाइनमेंट में ये होता है। अब इतने सारे कन्फ्लिक्ट्स हो रहे हैं वर्ल्ड में, सीरियन कन्फ्लिक्ट हुआ, अफगानिस्तान में जो टर्मोइल हुआ वो हम सबने देखा, रशिया यूक्रेन का वॉर हो रहा है, ठीक है। अब इस सब सिचुएशन में अगर इंडिया किसी एक कैंप में होता, मतलब या तो इंडिया प्योरली यूएसए की साइड होता या रशिया की साइड होता, तो इन सब कन्फ्लिक्ट्स में इंडिया भी चला जाता, इन सब कन्फ्लिक्ट्स में ना चाहते हुए इंडिया को भी पार्टिसिपेट करना पड़ता, राइट। क्योंकि वी हैव सीन अफगानिस्तान में, यूक्रेन में, सीरिया में यूएस एंड रशिया हैव had their power play. So non-alignment as a foreign policy is helping us. हमने नहीं बोला कि हम किसकी साइड हैं, इसलिए इन सब कन्फ्लिक्ट से हम बच जाते हैं, इन सब कन्फ्लिक्ट का पार्ट हम नहीं होते, राइट। और दूसरी साइड आर्म ट्विस्टिंग नहीं होती है, आर्म ट्विस्टिंग से हम बच जाते हैं। कोई एक कंट्री हमें फोर्स नहीं कर सकती है कि सी तुम मेरे कैंप में हो तो तुम दूसरे के साथ ये डील नहीं कर सकते हो। We are protected from arm twisting and we are protected from conflicts. So this is how non-alignment as a foreign policy remains relevant in the contemporary world order also. यही पूछा गया था क्वेश्चन में, right? Now we see कि why being non-aligned is not very relevant in today's times. So we see that India is surrounded by hostile neighbors, which means we have Pakistan on the west, on the north, and we have China on the north. So when we are having these two countries, these hostile neighbors around us, we need some amount of security. We need some military strength, right? They can wage a two-front war anytime. तो उस चीज से डील करने के लिए हमें सपोर्ट चाहिए, हमें मिलिट्री स्ट्रेंथ चाहिए, और उसके लिए वी हैव टू हैव a close association with USA also, we have to have a close association with Russia also. यहाँ से हमारे डिफेंस इंपोर्ट्स आते हैं, यूएसए हमें डिफेंस टेक्नोलॉजी देता है, वी हैव साइंड द 4 एग्रीमेंट्स विद यूएसए। तो ये होस्टाइल नेबर्स के साथ कभी ऐसी टू वॉर फ्रंट की सिचुएशन आती है या और कोई कंफ्लिक्ट क्रिएट होता है, तो वी नीड सम सपोर्ट फ्रॉम the superpowers, or let's say from the powers around the world, from these countries US and Russia. तो एकदम non-alignment cannot help us. We cannot claim that no, we will not align with any of these countries. हम तो किसी के साथ नहीं हैं, तो जब आप पर दिक्कत आएगी तो आपके साथ भी कोई नहीं होगा, राइट ऐसे सिचुएशन हो गई। हमारे यहाँ होस्टाइल नेबर्स हैं, तो हम ये रिस्क नहीं ले सकते कि हम किसी के साथ भी अलाइन नहीं करेंगे। दूसरा ये है कि हमें अपना नेशनल इंटरेस्ट देखना है, हमें टेक्नोलॉजिकली डेवलप करना है, इकोनॉमिक माइट बनना है, तो उसके लिए यूएसए, रशिया या बाकी जो भी कंट्रीज हैं थ्रू आउट द वर्ल्ड, हमें उनके साथ रिलेशंस रखने होते हैं। जैसे इंडिया इज हैविंग गुड रिलेशंस विद सऊदी अरेबिया ऑल्सो, इंडिया इज हैविंग गुड रिलेशंस विद ईरान ऑल्सो, ठीक है, विद इजराइल ऑल्सो, एंड विद कंट्रीज जो आपस में एक दूसरे को दुश्मन की तरह देखते हैं, इंडिया की गुड रिलेशंस हैं उन सब के साथ, बिकॉज इंडिया इज लुकिंग नॉट एट दोज कंट्रीज रिलेशंस विद देमसेल्व्स, उनके आपस में क्या रिश्ते हैं उससे हमें कोई लेना देना नहीं है, हम अपना नेशनल इंटरेस्ट देखते हैं कि हमारा नेशनल इंटरेस्ट कहाँ से सर्व हो रहा है। दूसरा है कि वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर चेंज हो गया है। ये वही बात है कि अब 2 पोल्स तो है नहीं है दुनिया में कि आप बोले हम नॉन अलाइंड रहेंगे, ठीक है। देर आर सो मेनी इमर्जिंग कंट्रीज, इंडिया इटसेल्फ इज अ इमर्जिंग कंट्री, चाइना इज अ इमर्जिंग कंट्री, ब्राजील इज इमर्जिंग, यूरोप इज इमर्जिंग। तो व्हेन देर आर सो मेनी पोल्स अराउंड द वर्ल्ड, सो देर इज नो मीनिंग ऑफ स्टेइंग नॉन अलाइंड, दो बाइपोलैरिटी तो खत्म हो गई है, राइट। नेक्स्ट इज इंडियाज रोल नाउ in as our external affairs minister S Jaishankar says that India has moved from being a country which was rule taking to rule making. हमारी फंक्शनिंग चेंज हो गई है, अब हम रूल्स लेते नहीं है, किसी और के बनाए हुए रूल्स को फॉलो करने की बात नहीं सोचते हैं, हम रूल मेकिंग पर आ गए हैं, हम अपने कानून, अपने रूल्स, अपनी फॉरेन पॉलिसी खुद ड्राफ्ट करते हैं। We have entered this stage. India is emerging as a global power. So when this role has improved. So we will continue to engage with whichever country जहां से भी हमारे इंटरेस्ट सर्व हो रहे हैं, और हम एक स्ट्रेटेजिक ऑटोनॉमी रखेंगे अपने रिलेशंस में विद द countries around the world. And as I have told about power dynamics, कि power dynamics change हुए हैं, adversaries जो हैं, जो countries एक दूसरे के दुश्मन हैं, वो भी engage कर रहे हैं एक दूसरे से, रशिया यूएस भी engage कर रहे हैं, चाइना यूएस भी इंगेज कर रहा है, इंडिया चाइना भी इंगेज कर रहा है, इंडिया पाकिस्तान भी इंगेज कर रहे हैं किसी ना किसी फ्रंट पे, ट्रेड में, इकोनॉमिक्स में या और किसी चीज में. तो यहाँ पर नॉन अलाइनमेंट रखने का कोई ज्यादा मीनिंग रहता नहीं है. देयर इज कॉम्प्लेक्स इंटरडिपेंडेंस, कंट्रीज आर डिपेंडिंग ऑन ईच अदर. ये कुछ कीवर्ड्स हैं जो मैं लिख देती हूँ, तो इसको आप अपने नोट्स में भी लिख सकते हैं, राइट. And so we are moving towards a stage of independence of action. Conclusion में आप यही कहेंगे कि see India is a part of Quad also, जहाँ पे मेन रोल कौन प्ले कर रहा है, यूएसए. इंडिया इज अ पार्ट ऑफ ब्रिक्स ऑल्सो, जहाँ पे मेन रोल कौन प्ले कर रहे हैं, रशिया एंड चाइना. इंडिया ने रशिया से S-400 भी खरीद ली, यूएसए को बुरा लगा था, ठीक है. इंडिया ने यूएसए के साथ न्यूक्लियर डील भी साइन करी, रशिया को बुरा लगा था. इंडिया ने यूएसए के साथ 4 फंडामेंटल एग्रीमेंट्स भी साइन कर रखे हैं, बहुत ज्यादा उसके साथ पार्टनरशिप भी करता है. रशिया को ये सब नहीं पसंद है, चाइना को ये सब नहीं पसंद है, बट हम उनके डिक्टेट्स के हिसाब से नहीं चलते हैं, राइट. अब हम नॉन अलाइनमेंट से वी हैव मूव्ड टुवर्ड्स मल्टी अलाइनमेंट, बट आवर अलाइनमेंट्स आर नॉट based on the dictates of any other country. Our alignments are based on issues. Issue based alignment करते हैं हम इशू को देखते हैं. क्लाइमेट चेंज है तो हमें किसकी तरफ खड़ा होना है, क्लाइमेट चेंज का इशू है तो वी हैव स्टूड बाय ग्लोबल साउथ, राइट. तो इस इशू पर हम एक इशू को एट अ हैंड लेते हैं. जो भी इशू आता है हमारे सामने, रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर है तो ये एक इशू है, हमें कैसा डील करना है, रशिया की ओपोजिशन करनी है या नहीं, खुलेआम उसके अगेंस्ट स्टेटमेंट्स देनी है या नहीं, ये डिसीजन हम खुद लेते हैं. हर इशू को हम हैंडल करते हैं अपने तरीके से. तो इशू बेस्ड अलाइनमेंट्स हैं. इंडो पैसिफिक की बात आ रही है, यहाँ पर सेफ्टी की बात आ रही है, तो हाँ हमने क्वाड ज्वाइन कर रखा है, ठीक है. देन जिस ग्लोबल साउथ की बात आ रही है, डेवलपिंग नेशंस की बात आ रही है, तो हाँ हमने ब्रिक्स ज्वाइन कर रखा है, ठीक है. तो नाउ दिस इज रेफर टू एज नॉन अलाइनमेंट 2.0 विच मीन्स स्ट्रेटेजिक ऑटोनॉमी. इट इज नॉट जस्ट कि 2 पोल्स हैं और हम दोनों के साथ अलाइन नहीं करेंगे, नहीं. अब हम मल्टीपल अलाइनमेंट्स बनाएंगे, जिसके साथ जहां जरूरत है, जिस टाइम पे जरूरत है, उस कंट्री के साथ वी विल फोर्ज आवर रिलेशंस, और हम उन रिलेशंस को एक नए लेवल पर लेकर जाएंगे. इशू बेस्ड अलाइनमेंट्स करेंगे, मल्टी अलाइनमेंट्स के भी हम फेवर में हैं. तो एस जयशंकर जी की किताब है द इंडिया वे, तो उसमें वो यही बोलते हैं कि नाउ इंडिया इज मूविंग ऑन द इंडिया वे. तो दिस इज हाउ यू कैन कंक्लूड दिस कि जो क्वेश्चन ने हमसे यही पूछा था कि नॉन अलाइनमेंट एज अ फॉरेन पॉलिसी टूल कितना रेलेवेंट है, तो उसके बारे में हमने बताया कि उसकी रेलेवेंस कम हो जाती है क्योंकि द वर्ल्ड इज चेंजिंग, द वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर हैज चेंज, देयर आर नो 2 poles नाउ, इंडियाज पोजीशन इन द वर्ल्ड हैज चेंज, वी आर हैविंग होस्टाइल नेबर्स, तो द नीड ऑफ द टाइम इज मल्टीपल अलाइनमेंट्स. और नॉन अलाइनमेंट का ही एक वर्जन है स्ट्रेटेजिक ऑटोनॉमी, नॉन अलाइनमेंट 2.0 स्ट्रेटेजिक ऑटोनॉमी. तो हम किसी के साथ भी ऐसे अलाइनमेंट नहीं कर रहे हैं टू चैलेंज एनी अदर नेशन, बट हम मल्टीपल अलाइनमेंट्स कर रहे हैं, हम इशू बेस्ड अलाइनमेंट्स कर रहे हैं अपने नेशनल इंटरेस्ट्स को ध्यान में रखते हुए, अपनी स्ट्रेटेजिक ऑटोनॉमी को ध्यान में रखते हुए. This is how you can approach this question. And with this, we have covered the 2 questions for today. So stay tuned to Only IAS, keep writing, and all the very best.